Have you ever known someone so completely that you thought nothing they did could surprise you? That was me and my best friend, Daniel, until one night. His simple invitation changed everything I thought I knew about US. For as long as I can remember. Daniel has been part of my story. We met in 7th grade, two awkward kids thrown into the same group project. He was bold, funny, the kind of person who spoke up even when he wasn't sure of the answer. I was quieter, more comfortable blending into the background. But somehow, we clicked instantly. He'd say something ridiculous, I'd roll my eyes, and we'd both just burst out laughing. That spark grew into a deep connection that carried us through high school, college, and beyond. Daniel wasn't just my best friend. He was my safe place. The person I could call at 2 a.m. when anxiety kept me awake. The guy who stood in the freezing rain just to help me change a flat tire. He knew my family drama, my embarrassing childhood stories, the parts of me nobody else ever saw, and I truly believed I knew him just as well. Until that night, it was a crisp Friday in early October. Work had utterly drained me all week, and all I wanted was a quiet evening with takeout and mindless television. I had just dropped onto the couch when my phone buzzed. Daniel, hey, you free tonight? Come over, I need to talk. At first, I didn't think twice about it. We hung out all the time, but there was something in that message short, clipped, with no emoji or inside joke that made me pause. Daniel's texts were usually full of his personality. Dramatic capitalization, way too many exclamation points. I frowned and typed back, me. Yeah, I'm free. Is everything okay? No answer. A few minutes ticked by, and I stared at the screen, hoping it would offer a clue. Finally, another buzz. Daniel, yeah, just come over. Bring your favorite chips. That felt a little more like him, but the unease lingered. I grabbed a bag of sour cream and onion chips, the snack we'd shared since we were kids, and headed to his place. The drive was short, but every red light gave me time to wonder. Did he lose his job? Was his mum sick? Or was this about us? That last thought slipped in, uninvited. I immediately shoved it away. Daniel and I were friends. Always had been. Anything else was absolutely impossible, right? As I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed the soft, dimmed glow from his windows. It looked like he had intentionally set the mood for something. I climbed the stairs, chips tucked under my arm, my heart beating faster than I wanted to admit. When the door opened, Daniel stood there, barefoot in sweatpants and a plain black t-shirt. His hair was a little messy, as if he'd run his hands through it 100 times. Hey, he said, stepping aside. Hey, I echoed, forcing a smile. The air between us felt different. Not bad, just heavier, charged with something unspoken. Inside. His apartment smelled faintly of vanilla candles and fresh laundry. The TV flickered in the background, with a paused Netflix menu. We settled on the couch. Chips between Ooster, exact same setup we'd had 1,000 times before. At first, we slipped into easy conversation. I teased him about his messy hair. He mocked me for still mispronouncing gyro. We laughed, and for a moment, everything felt perfectly normal. But then, the silences started stretching longer. I'd catch him glancing at me, and then quickly looking away, his fingers drumming restlessly on the arm of the couch. Something was building, waiting to be released. Finally, Daniel cleared his throat. So, I didn't just invite you over to hang out. I froze with a chip halfway to my mouth. Yeah, I figured, I said, trying to laugh off the tension. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. His voice was softer now, almost hesitant. There's something I've been meaning to tell you for a while. My pulse quickened. Okay, what's up? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he rubbed his palms together like he was desperately trying to work up the courage. This wasn't the Daniel I knew. The fearless guy who cracked jokes in front of strangers, who once sang karaoke sober without a second thought. This was someone utterly vulnerable. Finally, he looked at me. Really looked. His deep brown eyes, steady but uncertain, locked onto mine, and the room seemed to shrink around us. I don't know how you'll react, he said quietly, but I can't keep it in anymore. I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. Daniel, you're starting to freak me out." He gave a small nervous laugh, not his usual carefree sound. Then he said it. 3 words that cracked the ground beneath me. "I love you." The air went completely still. My breath hitched. My heart stumbled like it had missed a beat. At first, I thought I'd misheard. But no. His face told me everything. The slight tremble in his jaw, the way his hands clenched together, the raw honesty in his gaze. He wasn't joking. For a moment, all I could do was stare. The world outside felt miles away. It was just him and me, 2 best friends on a couch. And suddenly, the line between us had been irrevocably blurred. Daniel shifted, misreading my silence. "See," he muttered, his voice tight. "This is why I didn't want to say anything. I knew it would mess things up." "No," I said quickly, my words tumbling out. "It's not that. I wasn't expecting this." And it was true. I hadn't expected it. But at the same time, something deep inside me whispered that maybe, just maybe, I'd been waiting to hear it. In that silence, memories flooded me. The time he stayed up all night when my dad was in the hospital. The way his hand lingered on my shoulder after a big win in our college intramural games. The countless times we shared a look that said more than words ever could. Had I missed the signs, or had I just been too scared to see them? Daniel's face was tense, waiting, his hands clenched like he was holding on for dear life. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. Finally, Daniel let out a shaky breath. "See, this is why I didn't tell you. You don't feel the same." "No," I said quickly, my voice sharper than I intended. "That's not it." He blinked at me, surprise flashing across his features. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to gather my scattered thoughts. "It's just, I wasn't expecting this at all. I mean, you're my best friend, Daniel. You've always been my best friend." His jaw tightened, but he nodded slowly. "I know, and maybe I should have kept it that way. But I can't pretend anymore." I'd seen Daniel in every mood over the years, angry, goofy, bored, ecstatic. But I'd rarely seen him this vulnerable. He was the kind of guy who cracked a joke at his own expense before letting anyone else see him sweat. Yet tonight, all that armor was gone. His voice was quiet, almost breaking. "Do you have any idea how hard it's been?" he whispered. "To sit next to you all these years, laughing at stupid memes, talking about life, and feeling like I want more, and knowing I couldn't say it because I was terrified you'd pull away." The sheer weight of his words hit me like a punch. I'd never thought about it from his side. Never, considered that every smile, every moment of closeness, might have meant more to him than I realized. I swallowed hard. "How long have you felt this way?" Daniel let out a small, bitter laugh. "Honestly, I don't even know. Since high school, maybe earlier. But I didn't let myself admit it until after college. Every time you came over, every time you smiled at me, like you do, it just got harder to keep it in." My stomach twisted, because the truth was, part of me had thought about it late at night, when I replayed our moments together. The way he'd sling his arm around my shoulder and hold it there a second too long. The way his laugh lit up a room, but somehow felt like it belonged just to me. I'd buried those thoughts, pushed them away as impossible. He was my best friend. We didn't cross that line, and now he was telling me he'd been standing on that line for years. I don't know what made me do it, instinct, maybe, but I reached out and laid my hand on his. His fingers twitched under mine, like he wasn't sure if he should pull away or hold on tighter. "I don't want to lose you," I said softly. Daniel's eyes flicked up to mine. The first real look we'd shared that night. I saw a glimmer of raw hope there. "You won't," he whispered. The touch lingered, longer than it should have, and in that moment, something electric passed between us. Not just friendship, something deeper, more raw, and much harder to deny. But then doubt crashed in like a wave of cold water. My mind spiraled. What if I lead him on? What if I'm not ready for this? What if stepping into something more ruins everything we've built? I pulled my hand back slightly, needing air. "Daniel, I don't know what this means for me. I trailed off, struggling to find the words. He nodded slowly, his face falling but understanding. You don't have to figure it out tonight. I need time, I said. I get it, he said quickly. I shouldn't have dropped this on you like a bomb. But even as he said it, I could see the profound relief in his eyes. The secret was out. And even if I wasn't ready to say the words back, I hadn't run away. We sat there for hours, drifting between heavy silences and awkward jokes used to fill the gaps. Neither of us knew how to go back to normal. Every laugh felt tinged with something new. Every glance carried unspoken weight. At one point, Daniel put on a movie, some random action flick we'd both seen before, but neither of us paid attention. My mind was too busy replaying his confession over and over. When I finally stood to leave, the clock read past midnight. Daniel walked me to the door, hands shoved deep in his pockets. For a long moment, we just stood there, facing each other in the dim hallway light. Thanks for coming, he said quietly. Always. I replied. Because it was true, his eyes searched mine, as if waiting for a sign, anything that might tell him where we stood. But I didn't have the words yet. Not tonight. So, I gave him a small, shaky smile. Good night, Daniel. Good night, he murmured. And as I stepped into the cool night air, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing between us would ever be the same. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind a storm of anxiety and wonder. My best friend, my other half, had just confessed he was in love with me. And the terrifying part wasn't that he'd said it. It was that deep down, I wasn't sure I didn't feel the same previously. Daniel, my best friend for nearly a decade, finally revealed the secret he'd been carrying for years. I'm in love with you, I told him. I needed time. But as I left his apartment that night, one thought echoed in my head. What if I felt the same, and I'd just been too afraid to see it? The next few days stretched like years. Normally, Daniel and I texted constantly, random memes, updates about our day, dumb inside jokes. But after his confession, the chat bubble stayed empty. At first, I thought I should give him space. Then, I wondered if he was giving me space. Either way, the silence was deafening. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leaped. Only to sink when it wasn't him. At night, I lay awake replaying everything. His trembling voice, the look in his eyes, the weight of his words. I'd never felt so torn. On one hand, fear whispered, don't risk it. Don't ruin the one friendship that's been your anchor all these years. On the other, something softer stirred. What if he's been the one all along? By the end of the week, I couldn't stand the silence anymore. I almost texted him, but before I could, fate intervened. It was Saturday afternoon, and I decided to grab coffee from the little cafe near our old high school. As I walked in, my stomach dropped. There he was, Daniel. He was standing by the counter wearing a grey hoodie, waiting for his order. His hair was still a little messy, the way it always was when he didn't bother styling it. When his eyes landed on me, surprise flickered across his face, followed by something I couldn't quite read. Relief. Maybe. Hey, I said awkwardly, shoving my hands in my pockets. Hey, he echoed. Just as uncertain. For a moment, we stood there like strangers, the weight of everything unsaid pressing between us. Finally, I managed a smile. Fancy seeing you here. He gave a small laugh, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes. Yeah, guess we both still crave the same overpriced caffeine. That tiny spark of shared humor loosened the tension just enough. When his order came up, he hesitated. Want to sit for a bit? I nodded. Yeah, I'd like that. We sat by the window, steaming cups between us. The sunlight filtered through the glass, catching the dust in golden beams. For a while, we talked about safe topics, work, movies, how ridiculous our hometown's traffic had gotten. But, eventually, Daniel sighed and set his cup down. Look, about the other night, he began. I held up a hand. No, don't apologize. He blinked. I wasn't going to. Not really. I know it probably threw you off, and I don't want you to feel like I expect anything. I just needed you to know. His honesty cut through me. He wasn't demanding or pressuring, just simply telling his truth. I nodded slowly. It did throw me off. But not in a bad way. Just in a way I don't know how to handle yet. His eyes softened. That's fair. Silence lingered, but it wasn't as heavy this time. It was almost tentative, like we were learning how to exist in this new version of us. After that day, we started talking again. But things weren't the same, not yet. Our texts were more cautious, less constant. When we hung out, there were pauses where laughter used to flow effortlessly. Every brush of his arm against mine felt charged, like an unspoken question, and through it all, I felt myself missing him. Even when he was right there, missing the easy, unfiltered rhythm we once had. One night, I sat in bed, scrolling through our old photos together, us in goofy Halloween costumes, US cheering at a baseball game, US lying on the grass in college, staring up at the stars. The thought hit me like a jolt. Maybe the reason I missed the before wasn't because things had changed, but because deep down, I wanted the change. I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. So I called my sister, Emma. She'd always been blunt, the kind of person who saw through me no matter how hard I tried to hide. When I told her what happened, she didn't gasp or freak out. She just said, "Finally. Finally." I echoed. She laughed. "Come on. The way you talk about Daniel, you've been half in love with him forever. You just didn't want to admit it." I rubbed my forehead. "But what if I'm wrong? What if I ruin everything?" Her voice softened. "Or what if you ruin it by not trying? Love doesn't come around like this every day, and if he's been brave enough to put his heart on the line, maybe it's time you figure out if you're ready to meet him halfway." Her words sank deep. Maybe she was right. Maybe the bigger risk was letting fear win. A week later, Daniel invited me over again. This time, there was no heavy text, no vague, "we need to talk," just, "pizza and Mario Kart tonight." It felt almost normal, almost. When I arrived, the scent of pepperoni and melted cheese filled his apartment. He grinned as he handed me a controller, and for the first time in weeks, we fell back into our rhythm, laughing, trash-talking, fighting for first place on Rainbow Road. But even in the laughter, the undercurrent was there. Every time our shoulders brushed, every time our eyes lingered a moment too long, I felt it. Later, when the pizza was gone and the game had ended in his victory as usual, we sat back on the couch. The quiet stretched between us, not uncomfortable, but charged. Daniel turned his head toward me. His expression was unreadable, a mix of hope and fear. "So," he asked softly, "where do we go from here?" My chest tightened. This was at the moment I'd been circling around since his confession. I took a deep breath. "I don't know exactly," I began. "But I do know this. I don't want to lose you, and I can't stop thinking about what you said." His eyes widened slightly, searching mine. I swallowed hard. My voice came out barely above a whisper, "And maybe, I feel more than I realized." The room went still. His lips parted, slightly, like he was about to speak, but no words came. Instead, his hand inched closer on the couch, hovering just beside mine. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The air between us was electric, like the world itself was holding its breath. And then, slowly, carefully, our hands touched. Not a dramatic gesture, not a sweeping kiss, just the simple press of skin against skin. But in that touch, everything shifted. That night, I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know where this road would take us. But as Daniel's hands slipped into mine, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't afraid anymore. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something real. Previously, Daniel and I had begun to close the distance that had grown between us after his confession. Weeks of silence and awkwardness gave way to one night of laughter, honesty, and something new. And when his hand slipped into mine on that couch, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. Maybe this was the start of something real. That night, after leaving Daniel's apartment, I lay in bed wide awake. My hand still tingled where his had touched mine. It wasn't dramatic or rushed. It was simple, gentle, but it meant more than I could put into words. I thought about everything, our childhood, our inside jokes, the years of friendship that had shaped us. And then I thought about his confession, the way his voice cracked when he said, "I'm in love with you." Some part of me had always known, even if I hadn't admitted it, and now I couldn't deny it any longer. I felt it too. But knowing it and saying it out loud were two different things. That week, I saw Daniel more often. Not because we planned it, but because it felt natural again. Dinner here, coffee runs there, gaming marathons that stretched late into the night. And yet, everything was different. I noticed the way he looked at me, open, unguarded, like he wasn't hiding anymore. I caught myself staring too long at the curve of his smile. The way his eyes lit up when I teased him. One night, we sat in his car outside my place after grabbing fast food. Music hummed low from the speakers, some nostalgic playlist from our high school days. He tapped the steering wheel in rhythm, and I realized I'd fallen in love with that simple, ordinary version of him, the Daniel who always felt like home. I didn't just want him in my life as a friend anymore. I wanted more. By Friday, I couldn't hold it in. I texted him, "Can we talk for real this time?" He responded almost instantly, "Always. Come over tonight." When I arrived, the air in his apartment felt thick with anticipation. He'd lit a candle, sandalwood maybe, and the soft glow flickered against the walls. We sat on the couch, the same place where everything had shifted before. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I took a breath. "Daniel, I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About us." His shoulders tensed, but he kept his eyes on me. "Okay." I fiddled with the hem of my hoodie, nerves sparking through me. At first, I didn't know what to do with it. "You're my best friend." The thought of losing that scared me more than anything. "I get it," he said quietly. But the more I thought about it, I continued. The more I realized I don't want to just be your best friend anymore. I don't want to pretend I don't feel it, too. His breath caught. You mean that?" I nodded, my heart pounding. "Yeah, I think I felt it for a long time. I just didn't let myself see it." For a moment, he just stared, like he was trying to process every word. Then slowly, a genuine smile spread across his face, one of those rare, unguarded smiles that reached all the way to his eyes. "I can't believe this is real," he whispered. "Me neither," I admitted. And then it happened. He leaned in, hesitating just long enough for me to meet him halfway. Our lips met in the softest kiss, tentative and careful, like we were both afraid we might break the moment if we pushed too hard. But when I felt the warmth of his mouth against mine, the world seemed to fade away. It wasn't fireworks or chaos. It was quiet, steady, like finally finding something I'd been missing without even knowing it. When we pulled back, I couldn't help but laugh, half from nerves, half from relief. "What?" he asked, grinning. "I just can't believe we waited this long." After that night, things didn't magically become perfect. We were still figuring it out. When to text, how much space to give each other, how to move from friends to something more without losing the foundation we'd built. But it felt right. We started going on real dates, though we joked that everything we'd ever done together could have counted as one. Dinner at that little taco place downtown. Long walks through the park where we used to ride bikes as kids. Movie nights that ended with us tangled on the couch, the film long forgotten. There were moments of uncertainty, of course. Times when I worried we were moving too fast. Or when Daniel questioned whether I'd wake up one day and decide I'd made a mistake. But every time, we talked through it honestly, patiently. That was the gift of being best friends first. We already knew how to talk, how to listen, and how to show up for each other. Now, we just added love to the equation. One evening, a couple of months later, we decided to go to a local LGBTQ+ community night at a bar downtown. It wasn't a big deal, on paper just a trivia night, neon lights, cheap drinks. But for me, it felt huge, because for the first time, I wasn't going with Daniel as just a friend. I was going with him as my boyfriend. When he reached for my hand as we walked in, my heart skipped, not out of fear this time, but out of joy. We didn't need to hide. We didn't need to downplay it. That night, surrounded by laughter, pride flags, and the hum of music, I realized how far we'd come, from secrets and silence, to this simple, fearless act of being together. Weeks turned into months. And every day brought new layers to our love. Some nights we stayed up late dreaming about the future places we wanted to travel. An apartment we might share someday, the dog we might adopt. One evening, as we sat on his balcony watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, Daniel turned to me. "You know," he said, "when I confessed to you that night, I was ready to lose everything. I truly thought you'd walk away." I squeezed his hand. I almost did. Not because I didn't feel it, but because I was scared. He smiled softly. "And now?" I leaned closer, resting my head on his shoulder. "Now, I'm not scared at all, because I know the answer." His voice was barely a whisper. "What's the answer?" I looked up at him, my heart full, and said, "That I love you, too." In the end, it wasn't a single moment that changed everything. It was every moment, every laugh, every late-night talk, every silent look we shared that led us here. My best friend invited me over, and I didn't expect his confession. But maybe the truth is, I'd been waiting to confess, and together, we found the kind of love that had been right in front of us all along.